Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to dive deep into the ocean that is English grammar. The first living, breathing creature that comes to greet us is tense. Now, make no mistake, this creature is really the most important of all, as he is the timekeeper of all that we do, have done already, or will do in future. Tense can be really complex and get us really tensed, and they can become the stuff that nightmares are made of. But here at Blissful Literati, have no fear, we will get to the bottom of it all and with much ease. And in the process, we'll take one approach that you have never heard before. Yes, we are going to learn something that we never knew before, and then once we master it, tense will be our buddy, not a nightmare. So let's begin our dive. We cannot live without some action. Life is bound by some actions or the other. Even when we are sitting idle or simply sleeping, we are doing something. That is, we are sitting or we are sleeping. All actions, verbs. Just as our life is defined by our action, similarly, those actions are bound in time. What we are today is because what we have done yesterday, and what we do today, that is in the present time, will make us what we will be tomorrow, that is in future. So our past influences our present, and our present results in the future. Now the word verb indicates action, okay? Main verbs, auxiliary verbs, their combinations, they all represent the time of the action and also how the action is perceived. Difficult? Okay, let me try to explain. They show us, these verbs, they show us whether something is going on or done already or will happen next. That is the time of action. And at the same time, they tell us whether the action is habitual or a one time matter or a repeated action. That is the action as we perceive it, its nature. Now let's have some basic terminology. Since verbs represent both the time of the action and how that action is perceived, we have two basic terms to indicate this dual role of a verb. So verbs, as we discussed just now, can tell us the time of an action, present, past, future. But at the same time, verbs can also tell us whether some action is complete or incomplete, whether something is going on, or something is being repeated, or something is habitual in nature. So, keeping this in mind, we have come up with two basic terms to discuss, that is, tense, which we all know, and aspect, which we will learn here. So, let's first start with the things we know, that is, tense. Tense represents the time of the action. The action may happen at the moment of speaking, that is, in the present, or either before or after it. Now here we have one such line that starts from one point and moves on further indefinitely. The arrowhead says that there is no definite finishing point. So what is this line indicative of? The first marker that we have indicates action that is in past. So that point is the time which we have left behind. We are no longer there. So where are we? We are right here at the present, right now. And from this right now, the present, we will move forward into the future. It is the time which we don't know already. It is the time that we will move towards. Now, only two forms, that is, present and past, have their own unique verb forms. The future makes use of modal auxiliaries and they do have their own past and present forms. You may say that the future is indicated by shall and will and we don't use it in present or past. But do remember that shall and will are modal verbs and they have their own present and past form. For example, shall is should in past and would is the past form of will. Only present and past verbs They have their unique forms for these two categories. They have their own inflections. They create their own unique word to meet the requirement of these two categories, that is present and past. Confusing? Difficult? Let's have some sentence for example. Tense in use. I eat rice. So you see, I eat rice. This is in present tense, and we are using the root verb eat. There is no change. It is just as it is. But in the second, he eats rice. It is also in present tense. But you see, the verb eat in this case takes one s after it. Now, this addition, this change, even though it is a minute change, is called inflection. The verb modifies itself to meet the need of the sentence, that is, the subject he. Similarly, I played cricket. If you look carefully, the root word is play. The verb is taking one ed ending. The verbs which take this kind of ending, ed or d, they are called regular verbs. The sentence is in past tense and the verb is regular. And this addition, this is called the inflection of a verb. He went home. This is also the past tense, but you see, there is no ed or d form. It is a totally new word from go. This kind of verbs are called irregular verbs. Now let's note this future tense. I shall eat rice. Very good, okay. But if you notice carefully, the verb eat is the same one which we used in the present tense. Similarly, I am going to eat rice, again future tense, but again the verb which we are using here is the same which we used in present tense, that is eat. So as I said before, future tense, they don't have their own unique verb forms. They make use of the forms already available, unlike present tense and past tense. They have their own form and they can also make some inflection to meet the need of the sentence. Now let us talk about aspect. Aspect deals with the perspective of the viewer regarding the action. Action that is completed is called perfect in aspect. Action that is incomplete is called obviously imperfect in aspect. Action that is going on is continuous or progressive in aspect. Action that is repeated is called iterative aspect. And action that happens regularly is of habitual aspect. Now, okay, I admit that this aspect is something that we are learning new. We never learned this before. But if you look carefully, there will be some words which you know already. For example, perfect. For example, continuous or progressive. You have heard these terms in relation to, say, present perfect or past continuous. So you see, the action that is completed is called perfect. The action that is going on is called continuous. So from here, we are getting the pointers, the definite and separate categories of same tenses. Present tense can be divided into four categories, past tense can be divided into four categories, and those categories are dependent on these aspects. We get the perfect, we get the continuous, and the iterative aspect or habitual aspect, they form the simple part, simple present or simple past. We will learn that in a separate video. But first of all, let's understand the rules of this aspect. We will have a chart. First, we will have a chart telling us the rules, and then we will have another telling us the example. So we have here present, past, and future, and we have progressive and perfect. So basically, what we can find here is that we are using be verb in its present and past form for progressive tense. We have the present participle in both cases. For the perfect part, we are using have verb in its present and past form along with past participle. The future, they take shall or will and be verb in its root form along with its present participle to indicate progressive aspect, while to indicate perfect aspect it takes shall and will and along with it have verb in its root form, the actual word have and past participle. Difficult, confused? Let's clear our doubts with some examples. Let's look at some sentences. We know these sentences, right? I am singing, present progressive. I have sung, present perfect. I was singing, past progressive or continuous. I had sung, past perfect. I shall be singing, future progressive. I shall have sung, future perfect. So you see, the tense that we have learned, that we have already learned, we are learning, we know, we are knowing, these tenses are actually composed of two different elements. That is tense, the time itself, and its aspect, how we perceive that action in that particular time. And once we know how to perceive some action, we will master all the tenses. Now let's move forward. Let's talk about some important verbs, some important aspects. This is the stative verbs aspect. There are some verbs which, more than action, indicate a state of mind or emotional and physical states. They indicate something cognitive. They don't talk much about action. These verbs are called stative verbs. Such verbs are continuous in general. I'm not talking about continuous tense, progressive tense, but you see, these verbs, the idea that they represent, they continue on. They don't stop. I mean, they can be stopped, but they cannot be finished. I mean, you can stop loving someone, you can stop loving someone, but you can never finish loving someone. Such ideas are unchanging. If you own something, if you have something, if you feel something, that thing continues. That thing doesn't change. And if it changes from one state into another. Now, these verbs are used to indicate a situation. For example, he hates mathematics, emotional state, mental. I own a Kindle, physical state. The Kindle is right here with me. Now let's take a look at some examples. All these verbs in this chart, dislike, sound, loathe, taste, doubt, adore, love, all these words, equal, agree, they are all stative verbs. That is, they don't talk much about some action. You see, astonish, what kind of action? But astonish indicates a state of mind, a cognitive aspect. So these words, they talk about a situation, they talk about a state of mind, emotional or physical aspect. Now let's move on to dynamic verbs. Dynamic verbs come in contrast to stative verbs. So instead of a state or a situation, such verbs indicate some actual action done by the subject. So you see, emotions, feelings, situation, state, and actual action, stative and dynamic. Such actions, however, can go on indefinitely without a proper end point of time. For example, grow, develop, sit. You are sitting somewhere, you can continue sitting there for no matter how ever the time goes on, passes on, rolls by. You can swim on, you can stare at something, but these are called activity verbs. They go on indefinitely. Such actions can also happen instantaneously, ending as soon as it begins, like kick. You kick your friend, it will start and it will end immediately. You cannot just kick somebody in slow motion. Bouncing a ball, you just dribble it, bounce it. It will go on, continue. But you see, you cannot bounce a ball in slow motion. Try turning on the switch, the lights. You will press it and it will switch on, turn on immediately, instantaneously. She turned on the lights, etc. Or may involve a marked change from one state to another. Like she crossed the finishing line. She was on one side of the finishing line in the race, and then she crossed the finishing line. She ended the race. She came victorious. So this is an achievement. You achieve kicking your friend. You achieve winning the race. They can also indicate an action which has a logical conclusion, a start, stop, as well as, and this is very important, a finishing point. Like he made a blueprint of his presentation. So when you are talking about making a presentation, the idea already includes that you will need some time. It will take some time to think about it, to prepare it, and he made. So the duration he has already taken. She wrote a letter to the editor. Now, writing, okay, you cannot go on writing indefinitely. If you're writing a letter, sometime or other it is bound to end. That is a logical conclusion. It will end. So these are called accomplishment verbs. You accomplish something. You accomplish writing a letter. You accomplish making a blueprint. Let's end this with some examples of dynamic verbs. For example, say, rain, ask, abandon, beg, play, drink, all these verbs that you can see here. For example, just think about beg. Beg indicates some action, you're doing something physically. Okay, you're not just thinking about it. Play, you actually have to physically play something, whether it is cricket or maybe it is chess. Drink, you cannot just imagine drinking, you actually drink something. So these verbs, these dynamic verbs, they mean some action actually being done. So here we end our discussion today. Thank you.